Welcome to Uncommons Weekly. We're going to turn our attention to international politics, but before we get there, I first just want to say that my thoughts are with the families and individuals in Jasper who have just been devastated by the wildfires. And there's no political statement here. It's incredibly important that we work across party lines, work across levels of government to look after those who have immediate needs, who have been directly affected, and that we then, looking forward, we work together to make sure we improve and strengthen emergency preparedness and adaptation efforts. We cannot allow ourselves to be in a position going forward where so many people are absolutely devastated by fires like this. Now, usually it's a weekly update. This is more of a monthly update. We're on a summer recess, but we are going to turn our attention to international politics this week. And when the Liberal government first took office in 2015, Trudeau said that many allies worried that Canada has lost its compassionate and constructive voice in the world. And he had a simple message: Canada is back. Initially, that meant doing our humanitarian part and welcoming tens of thousands of Syrian refugees. And we've continued to play a significant role in welcoming refugees ever since, helping to lead the world. But what of other obligations, like defense spending and international development assistance? Well, recently, the Prime Minister attended a NATO summit in Washington, and Canada is unfortunately an outlier in the alliance now, one of a minority of countries to spend less than 2% of GDP on defense. By way of a quick history lesson, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is an alliance founded in 1949 in response to Soviet aggression in Central and Eastern Europe. Lester Pearson, who was then the Secretary of State for External Affairs, he described the treaty as not a pact for war, but a pledge for peace and progress. Canadians helped to shape the treaty. Fast forward more than 50 years, and in 2006, NATO defense ministers committed to spend 2% of GDP on defense. Despite zero progress in the subsequent 8 years, the Harper government joined other NATO members and formalized the pledge in 2014 to be met by 2024. And here we are. It is 2024, and 23 of 31 allies are expected to meet or exceed the target, compared to only 3 allies 10 years ago. Canada is not among them. Now, given both Liberals and Conservatives share this commitment, let's just compare notes. In 2006, Canada spent 1.2% of GDP on defense. In 2015, Canada spent the same. Through 10 years of the Harper government, spending averaged just shy of 1.2%. Under Trudeau, spending has averaged more than 1.3%. This year it comes in at 1.37%. Part of the increase is more flexible guidance from NATO rather than new spending. But factor in the new defense policy and Budget 2024 commitments, and spending is projected to increase to 1.76% of GDP by 2029-30. Now, there's still reason to criticize. Of course there is. We are still below our commitment this year. 5 years from now, despite new spending, we will still be below our commitment, though the gap will obviously have closed significantly. The government should have budgeted the 2% in greater detail rather than announced an uncosted 2032 timeline as a result of pressure at the summit. And let's be clear, to close the gap entirely from existing budget commitments would take a significant $9 billion in additional spending per year. It's not nothing. But if you're going to say the PM was treated as a human piñata, if you're going to politicize the issue in a ridiculous way, you should probably have your own plan. Poilievre says he will work towards this pledge, which sounds the same as the Liberal Party, but without the actual conviction of real dollars on the table. He claims Trudeau has demolished the military, a lie entirely contradicted by actual budget commitments. He says we need to end wokeness in the military, without any mention of the need to take sexual harassment seriously, and without any understanding of the need to accommodate diversity if we're actually going to grow our military ranks, a real challenge on its own. And he says he'll pay for the 2% target by cutting foreign aid. This is all deeply, deeply unserious stuff. We are already well short of a different Pearsonian target of 0.7% of GDP that should be spent on foreign aid. We're less than half that right now. There is no amount of backroom bureaucracy or improper development assistance to cut that would come anywhere close to $9 billion. And cuts would mean, we should know this, cuts would mean walking away from Ukraine and other desperate situations around the world. We need more development assistance to help prevent democratic backsliding, not less. Look at Bangladesh today as just one example. The military is in the street, the internet has been shut down, and democratic rights have been violated. We need to renew our commitments to strengthening democracy in Bangladesh and around the world. And I mention Bangladesh because I represent a large Bangladeshi community, but there are many places around the world where Canada can and should play a role, and that will often mean backing up our words with action. Our goals, security, peace, democracy, military spending, and development assistance are complementary ideas if we take those goals seriously and if Canada is truly back. Now, Canada wasn't only a founding member of NATO. We also played a key role in the creation of the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. And you wouldn't know it from Canada's recent public statements, but the ICJ recently released an advisory opinion in which it determined that a number of Israeli government policies are contrary to international law as an illegally occupying power. The expansion of settlements with the intention to create irreversible effects on the ground, the exploitation of natural resources, the systemic failure to prevent or punish attacks by settlers, restrictions on movement, and more. Now, this is, of course, consistent with Canada's long-standing foreign policy as it relates to settlements, and we as Canadians and the Canadian government should be acting consistently with that foreign policy. Going forward, with a robust commitment to international development assistance, not walking away from it, but committing to it, Canada can and should play a leading role in the reconstruction of Gaza. But to get there, we need stability and a credible path towards Palestinian self-determination. Or as the ICJ put it, there are obligations not just on Israel, but on other states, including Canada, to cooperate with the UN to ensure an end to Israel's illegal presence in the occupied Palestinian territory and the full realization of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. We need to show leadership and to play a proactive role in advancing peace. Of course, as much as Canada can and of course should play a role, there will be no path to peace without the United States. And when Congress is hosting Netanyahu, a man who the ICC chief prosecutor is looking to arrest, it certainly doesn't bode well. No one should be above the law. Israel has been a long-standing ally as a democracy in the Middle East, in part because of its commitment to rights and the rule of law. And we have seen far too much democratic backsliding, including the continued refusal to take international law seriously, which has only gotten devastatingly worse. Of course, the U.S. has its own challenges with democratic backsliding to deal with. Earlier this month, we saw former President and current Republican nominee Donald Trump survive an assassination attempt by a sniper at a campaign rally. We don't know what motivated the attacker, but we should put politics aside and we should all condemn political violence. Here in Canada, we thankfully have not seen an assassination attempt in the same way, but MP safety has been a growing concern. My colleague Pam Demoff, she isn't running again in part because of the toxicity and harassment that she's been subjected to. In the States, it's a whole other level. And staying with American politics, and no less a story, current President Joe Biden announced he's not running. Current VP Kamala Harris will be taking his spot at the top of the ticket. In his public address, Biden acknowledged what many people have been saying for months. This is about more than one person. It's a decision that puts the nation above his own interests. It's what's best for democracy and advancing the interests of Americans. We need more of that selfless leadership that puts the nation before the individual leader. And I would add that the decision isn't only in the interests of Americans, it's in the best interests of Canadians. And it's easy to run down a list of concerns about a second Trump presidency. His team's Project 2025, as ridiculous as it is, it encourages regulating a woman's body, but pushes back against regulating the fossil fuel industry because that is a bridge too far. But I will leave American politics to my American friends for the most part, and I will just say that Donald Trump is bad for Canada. He was bad for Canada in his first term, and he will be worse for Canada if he gets a second term. We have a long history of working with American administrations regardless of partisan stripe. But Trump poses a real threat to our economy with tariffs and to our security with the possible abandonment of our allies. As President Reagan put it, we are more than friends and neighbors and allies. We are kin, who together have built the most productive relationship between any two countries in the world. To my American friends, let's not forget that. Because if you do, we won't be remembering the Founding Fathers, we won't be remembering the shining city on the hill. You're going to be left with this.
The next President of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.